You live.
Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you very much for being patient with the delay. I was having some weather-related connectivity issue. Thank you very much for joining us for the Executive Affairs Work Session on January 5th, 2022. I'd like to begin with some remarks regarding our agenda items and make a proposal and move forward to some discussion here. On the table right now is an item that was referred to this work session from the last board meeting, which is the slate of salary raises that were placed before the board for consideration at the last December 15th board meeting. Today, what I would like to do is talk a little bit about that slate and mostly about a way to move forward, because the board has some very serious, very important questions regarding these raises that range all the way from the compensation structure to start with for at-will employees, all the way out to how the numbers work. So in order to discuss this, I want to start with a few pieces. First of all, when we have several items on one slate with several different issues that are embedded in that slate. And the way I like to think about this, I like to think about this as buckets. So we have issues of equity in terms of when employees were brought on at a certain salary level, and then have the salary level may have changed. So we have equity issue for equal work. We have at-will employees working different scope of work. We have at-will employees working in different job titles with different scopes of work. We have equity issues in terms of parity with other districts. We have other issues also embedded in this slate along the lines of cost of living increases and the way in which, just the process in which that this is put before us. These are enduring questions. These are important questions. They're important questions for at-will employees, and they're not uncommon in terms of when you work in nonprofits. They're also not uncommon when you talk about working with heavily unionized institutions. So when you have an institution that has strong union relationships, has strong union contracts, what do you do then with at-will employees? This is something that has come up over and over for this district, even beyond the current superintendency and the current proposal at hand. As a result, when I looked through all of it, and I drew on some experience and some common practice in nonprofits and in large educational institutions, smaller educational institutions, as well as institutions that work with states, like state government, county government, etc. I would like to propose that we have a discussion about considering contracting with a consultant to do a comprehensive study regarding compensation for at-will employees. That means compensation structure, terms of work, and the way in which we would move forward. Because I think it will clarify a lot. It's very studied. It would encompass the questions that are at hand here, the ones that were brought up last meeting and in the interim. And it will give us the kind of information that as a board, we need to have before, in good fiduciary responsibility, we can move forward. Additionally, what I like about this is that then it will also set a strong process so that we have equity among our staff, that we have a compensation structure that is ongoing, that's responsive, and that makes sense, and also will continue, ensure that continuity in our district. So with that said, I'd like to open up for discussion, for consideration about looking at and engaging in having a salary study, a compensation structure salary for all of our at-will employees. And what I'd like to do is just go around and have some discussion on that point. If you have something to say on it, please go ahead when I call on you. If you need a minute to think about it, you can say pass and I will go around again. I have no problem doing that. I know this is relatively new. I did send 2 emails about it, but sometimes we need a little time. And again, this is really important. It's important that we think this through and we do this kind of work and consideration carefully. So I'd like to open it up with a comment from Ms. Belton-Cotman about your position on this subject about engaging a consultant to do compensation and salary study.
I thank you, Madam Chair. Happy New Year to everyone. I want to say that certainly this is the idea that I certainly had. However, the idea that I would like to recommend is, in addition to doing a salary study, that we also charge them with the responsibilities of doing a time study as well, considering that there are 8 hours in a day, maybe 10 if you're working over, or 12 or whatever, but there's a need to make sure that the work that's being assigned to people can realistically be done in a manner of time. My concern with this is that this particular commission would report directly to the board, and that it would not include any of the players who are up to be considered for raises, nor will it would be, and my recommendation is that the job would be bidded, and the board would be determining who would do that responsibility. I think it's important because of, and particularly, it's very important to me in particular because of our union contracts. If we are at the stage where we can afford to negotiate union contracts, and when we talk about at a high rate, as we are looking at these particular salaries, then we need to look at the impact on what happens to our in our bargaining unit as well. So I think that would also be something. And it certainly would have to be someone that has the expertise to do it. I would personally reach out. I think that there's a need to have probably a commission. The requirement would be that they would not consult with anyone. They would not consult with any employees other than what is required to do the job. So I think this is an excellent idea, and I support it wholeheartedly as long as it is an arm's length transaction that's involved with this current people who are overseeing the district at this time. Thank you.
If I could respond to just a few pieces of that, just it's going to be pretty pro forma here. I think scope of work is really critical. I would agree with you. You called it time study, I call it scope of work. I think we mean the same thing here. I think that's really a critical piece. And generally when I've been through these in my work life a couple different times, generally when it works, it's a neutral firm, as you point out. It would be a neutral firm. It would be a firm that is experienced in doing this, and they would be asking questions like, in other words, what is it you want to study? We would be giving that charge. They would have access. They would need to talk to district personnel because that's a part of that study.
Absolutely.
It needs to be done that way. But that is part of why I didn't want to, my suggestion wasn't to do it in-house, is because that's a double bind that I don't want to see our employees be put into. That's a very difficult place for them to be. I don't think it's a healthy place for them to be. And I would like to have this and have a very clean, neutral look at where we go next.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. So next I have Dr. Evans Brown.
Sorry about that. I had to find my cursor.
I get it.
Well, you know, over the past week, I've been in consultation with Ann, Dr. Revere, and President Bertucci. So we have come to a conclusion and agree that a study would be appropriate. I think an outside auditor would be the best and the best practice. I think also once this is done, it doesn't have to take a long time frame. I think it could be done in a minimum time frame. I don't know what that is. However, I do think that once this is concluded, it will be more of a consistent, permanent, kind of process, so that we don't have to go here again, about raises and et cetera, because it will be something that is long-term and permanent.
Thank you very much, Dr. Evans-Brown. I appreciate that. Mr. Hurd, you're up next.
Thank you, Dr. Rivera, and thank you for your comments and your emails. I did have time to read through both of them, very extensive and very well stated. And it really raises the same concerns that I have also about having a formal way of looking into raises and trying to find a comprehensive way to adapt to today's times, to today's workloads and studies. Some of the things that I look at is the body of work. And as I looked at the pay scale amongst our administrative staff members, and also our staff members that works directly with our students, I've seen that some of our principals get paid more than some of the administrative staff members, and for the body of work that they do. And these individuals were former principals and heads of schools. So it's about looking at if that's a promotion to come work downtown and try to run operate a department as an assistant superintendent. I believe that some of those issues need to be examined immediately. And I think that the years of experience has a lot to do with it also, and also the scope of work that they're doing, because as I look at their assignments that they have, a lot of the stuff that they're doing, to me, it doesn't seem like it fits the criteria for the job that they're supposed to be doing. So it looks like they're working outside of their boundaries. And personally, I think that, the most of the work that our administrative staff members are doing they're understaffed and also. So I would like to take a look at that also to see where can we complement our departments to help them with more staff members and trying to find a better hiring practice, because I truly don't believe that our administrative staff have everything based upon wages and salary. I think it's, sometimes we can lose people in this district due to being overloaded with work and working, beyond. Like I said previously in the board meeting that I called staff members, we talk, and it's be 8 or 9 o'clock at night and they're still in their offices. And that's time that's away from their homes, their families, their children. And they're also working on weekends, late weekdays. One even said they're working on Sundays. So it's really no time for themselves or with that. So, and I do agree with Sharon when he said that having this panel report directly to the board and only the board with the studies, so that we can examine, for ourselves to see, what's the best fit for this district and best fit for the community. And I would like to put a time limit on it also. I'd like to have a time limit placed upon it, so that we can have a time frame within the study and get appropriate settings. So I believe that's everything that I have right now, and I'll turn the floor back to you, Dr. Rivera.
Thank you very much. I certainly agree with the urgency here. I think a 30 to 40 day work scope for a consultant would work really well here, because it aligns with our processes, it aligns with where we're at, and it gives us the information that we need in a timely manner. I think that it's really critical that we work, as you pointed out, Mr. Hurd, that we work to ensure that there are just clear, it's clear how we work with our at-will employees. There's a clear compensation structure. There's a clear scope of work. All of this is really important. Now, the one thing about engaging in the salary study is we're partners in this work, and we're going to work with the firm absolutely as the board, and they're going to work with the district as well to make sure that they have really accurate information and they accurately represent what's going on. So I'm looking forward to that kind of partnership as we move forward. Thank you. Ms. J, you're up next.
Thank you. So I just want to applaud you for taking an emotionally charged issue like this and giving it some rational structure, because that's what we need. That's what we need. So everybody feels comfortable. That's what we need, so that our stakeholders and the community and everybody who, unfortunately felt really blindsided by this can look at a work that's been a work product with all the information, transparent, and I think that's the only way to do it. So I applaud you for setting this plan in motion, and I fully support it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay, so Ms. Mikosi, you would be up next.
So I don't want to be repetitive. I do support, the consultant. I've been, pretty clear, and I think we all have around developing a structure. So moving forward, we can work off of that. So this is the beginning of that, and I'm all for it.
Thank you very much. President Petrucci.
Thank you, Dr. Rivera. Yeah, I stand behind you. I know we've had numerous discussions that Dr. Evans-Brown referred to. I've been in both bargaining union, where I sat in the negotiating committee for many, many years, and as an at-will employee. I will say what the two have in common, though, is that they have a defined process. And I really liked your comments earlier about trying to get a defined process so that that our at-will employees have a reasonable expectation as to when they will be, reviewed, when they can expect compensation, and when their jobs will be audited, so they know if they're doing something new or something more or something less, or maybe they need for the position to be divided because of increase in scope. All those things should occur on a regular and routine basis, because things develop and change. When you're performing one task and suddenly the rules change and now you're performing multiple tasks. So I think this is really will give us a non kind of, it'll give us that kind of third party objective, that scholarly distance, having someone take a nice objective. I did like former President Kottman's comments about, we do have the ability to offer, some things that we would like to see this firm take a look at as well. Maybe it's the big five, but maybe it's also some of our surrounding suburban districts where some of our teachers may leave to go to as well. So we could incorporate something along those times as well, if that's the will of the board. But thank you for your efforts. I think this is a great idea.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Mr. Scott?
Thank you, Dr. Rivera. I agree with your proposition. And I particularly agree with the sentiments shared by Mr. Hurd and Ms. J. I think this is, given the circumstances, the best way to proceed. Just want to reiterate that I remain committed to getting this done so that our staff are fairly and equitably compensated, especially as it pertains to gender. And also want to just again reiterate the concern that we have cabinet members right now that are acting in different positions and not being compensated for those positions that they're acting in. So just want to bring that to the surface again and make that known. But I, again, support your proposition and how to proceed with this, and doing it with some urgency.
Yes, I agree with the urgency. Thank you, Mr. Scott. Ms. Woods?
Yes, I agree with having an objective party handle this study so that we can actually know that the figures and analysis that are used are neutral, that we're not taking things like the salaries in New York City, which the costs are 165% higher, and saying, wow, our staff is so underpaid. I'd rather have something neutral that I can objectively agree with. And I also think we need a neutral party, because if you give, it's like baseball or sports. If you give one player a 25, 35, 40% raise, it affects the other players. Everybody, the other players are going to want that same kind of raise. So what we do with the exempt, non-exempt, or one union will have a significant impact on the other direct service staff, the other unions. And I really think we need to take this approach, because I've had people consistently say that the teachers are direct staff, the principals are direct staff, the engineers are cleaning the buildings, they're dealing with COVID, and can you afford to give all of those people, would it be sustainable if all of them said they want 10, 15, 25, whatever? So, I mean, the overall picture of the impact of what we do in this case is beyond just the exempt employees, and we could potentially be a Rochester and bankrupt ourselves if we don't do this objectively, fairly, transparently, and with some sensibility of how exempt employees' salaries relate to union salaries. You know, I'm like you, I've worked in governments, federal, state, county, local, and I've never seen anything where, you know, several cases is I, as an exempt employee in the county exec's office, I got the same raise as our union employees. I didn't get more, and I guarantee you I've truly felt all the hours we worked, we should have, but I would really like to see something established, a consistent, fair, objective standard and process. So I agree with you on your proposal.
Thank you very much. I look forward to working further to ensure that we have equity, to ensure that we maintain our responsibility for the continued I just blanked out, I'm sorry, that we maintain responsibility for continuing to support the district, both with continuity in staffing and also with strong financial sense. So it sounds like there's some consensus on the board that we will go ahead and pursue this action. I think our next step to start working to identify where we go next, we'll have to get together and move through our process in terms of identifying a firm, getting a consultant, etc. And so we can start bringing some of this forward at our next business meeting. Dr. Cash, I'm going to leave you room for comments, and then I'd like to make one final comment at the end before I close the work session.
Thank you, Dr. Rivera, and good evening, colleagues. Dr. Rivera and I spoke at length this afternoon, and that is why I think that with a few additional points of emphasis, that I can support the effort that I think you're trying to make. First and foremost, I think it's important to make sure that you and all of you, you know, show your gratitude, show your appreciation for the staff. This staff is human, just like all the other staffs. I know I've heard it from you, from teachers and aides and assistants and principals and so forth. This staff is exceptional, have been performing for a long time, serving the district. But yet they also are unique. I know you're calling them at will, but they're really what I call the executive team. They're the cabinet. They're the apex of the organization. And we won't get much done, no matter how much you want it to get done, if these folks aren't performing at top level. You just won't. So I think that's important to acknowledge them, not compare so much to unions, because that's a different kind of conversation. We're not trying to compare, because if you go that way, they're actually underpaid relative to the unions and what the unions can make in overtime and so forth. So I don't want to get all of that conflated. We work 24/7 and on call all the time. So that's one thing. The other condition for me is the urgency. I've heard it said by several of you. I appreciate that you are thinking about this employee group. They're exceptional. As I've said before, you hear them all the time. They're the ones you know the most, because every board work session, every board meeting, that's who you're interacting with. But I would like to see a specialized firm work on this. It's not just a study. This is the executive level of an organization, and those firms specialize in that kind of cost comparison. So I would like to see that you add that into your condition for the kind of firm that you employ or that you seek to bid for this work. I would also like to see some sense of timeline and urgency. I don't hear it. I did hear that, but that for me, this means this. That means February, trying to get this found and onto some kind of board meeting for February, a 30 to 45 day possible engagement, and then into an April, May budget season type of time frame. I've heard that from President Petrucci. I've heard that from you this afternoon, Dr. Rivera, and I think that kind of timeline is important so that the cabinet can feel like you care about them, you see their worth, and that you're going to invest in them. Because short of that, this right about now in February, folks start looking for what they're going to do if they don't have a sense that they're going to be thought about and protected. They will start looking for alternative situations and scenarios, and we can't afford that. It's not a good business set of decisions. It's not a good business model. So I come to you with a full spirit of working together on this. I like that you have thought about it thoughtfully, Dr. Rivera, so I want to commend you for that. But the whole point for me was to keep the conversation and have the discussion, because I see it a little differently than you do. And I see a trickle effect that can become a faucet gusher if we don't at least signal to this group that we think they're doing a great job. We want to keep them, and we want to keep them as a strong foundation for building the future of this district. And I think that's the message. They'll keep doing their job, but they have to have that signal from you as a board that you care about them, that you value them, and that you want to see them stay and remain with the district. And that's what I need to build. I'm trying to build succession here and build so that we can run for a good long while, on a good track that we've already begun. So the record speaks for itself. You know, you have now a district that you can be proud of. Wonderful things going on in the district. Far more good than anything else. And we appreciate doing the work. We enjoy doing this work. We're servant leaders, and that's what we do. But with that kind of a time frame and trying to get this into a more structured sense, then I'm 100% behind it.
Thank you very much. So I did ask to make a final comment on my end, which is I'm going to reiterate that I believe it's critical for the district to have a clear, comprehensive, sustainable compensation structure for all of our at-will employees. It helps us to move forward. It helps us with succession. It helps us to ensure that we have a stable, coherent, and strong district moving forward, which is in our best interest as board members and my best interest as a BPS parent, for sure. And also, it's really important to maintain that we are equitable in these compensation structures. And as a district, all of these pieces move together. We have to think about these things together. In addition, I want to highlight again, there is urgency to do this, to make sure that we do this. And it's particularly in an area, in a time that's so difficult. So as I said, I really think we should move forward with this. We can't officially take votes. It's a work session, but I'm glad that we have consensus, because that way we can start moving this process forward for our next business meeting. It sounds like everyone is on board with that. My final comment is one piece about, it's interesting, Dr. Cash, that you chose the term servant leader. It's a concept that's extremely important to me. Being a servant leader means that you see yourself, from my understanding, that you see yourself integrated with an institution, connected to everyone that works in that institution. And so in the spirit of servant leadership, because I wasn't able to do this before, I want to directly thank the cabinet for their endurance, for their stamina, for the hard, dedicated work that they are doing in an extraordinarily difficult and complex time. I have some very deep personal feelings about this as a fellow member of the education community. I have never in 25 years as an educator and as an administrator ever seen anything like this before. And so I just wanted to thank the cabinet personally, that thank you for the work that you're doing. As we have continued to thank our staff, we've continued to thank our teachers, and we've continued, frankly, to thank our families and our students too for maintaining this. We're all in this together, and I appreciate the work. And it's correct, I have not said this to the cabinet before, so I wanted to say thank you to you as well. I appreciate you very, very much. That said, I also just want to reiterate, in the spirit of that appreciation, that's exactly why we need to do this kind of comprehensive look at compensation structure. It's to make sure that we have that equity throughout the entire system, and that we work together in tandem like the team we're supposed to be, and that we ensure and protect this district that we all really, really care for. So I appreciate that. That said, sounds like all we're fairly on the same page. All minds are clear. Can I move to close the session? Ms. Belton-Conlon.
Can I ask one question? Because some of our goals for, one of our goals for 2021 is to look at student data.
Absolutely.
And part of the Council of Great City Schools is that we spend 50% of our time focused in on academics. And I would like to discuss or see possibly if the executive team could put together a calendar so that we could start looking at, as soon as possible, maybe our next session next week, student data, okay, in order to try to continue to move things forward in regards to our guardrails, to make sure that that's also reflected. So I'm just really hoping that these sessions, our work sessions, will start being used for the advancement of our children, and not as it is now, just basically provide information to the public. That's just a goal that I'd like to see for this year that we move forward with.
I can't speak for every member, but I can speak for myself that our students should be at the very center of our work. And that is actually another reason why I wanted to approach this issue the way I did, because that way we are doing the work of the district. We're ensuring that we're working, because we do have that financial oversight. We are responsible for the employees in the district as well. We make sure we take care of that. But at the same time, we want to be able to make enough room to talk about student achievement, and that's really critical. I will leave actual comment on what comes next in student achievement to the capable hands of Dr. Evans Brown to respond to that piece. I wouldn't want to overstep. That is her committee, but thank you for letting us know that, bringing our attention back to our students.
Well, the reason I brought it up to you, because you three are meeting, and you have the educational background, and you have the information from the Council of Great City Schools about setting up a calendar, a timeline.
Yes.
And so it may involve you as well under the executive session part of it, executive committee part of it, because it may overreach into yours as well. That's why I brought it up. Okay.
Completely fair, and that's definitely on the schedule. I do have a draft one that's going to be, it needs amending. It's rough, definitely. So I'm happy to continue that work forward. Thank you. So with that, I'd like to close out the Executive Affairs work session. Thank my colleagues here for their kind attention, and move over to Finance and Ops.
Thank you, Chairwoman, Dr. Rivera. For the Finance and Ops Committee today, Dr. Cash has asked that we go over school operations, safety, and security. And since it is finance and operations, and this is a very important concern in the district with all the different events going on at our schools, with our children needing to reacclimate themselves to coming back to school, with all the trauma facing our parents and our students, and some of the events in the newspapers. School operations, safety, and security is a very important issue. So Dr. Cash, I will turn it over to you to do your presentation as you see fit.
Thank you, Chairwoman Woods. Colleagues, this is an area that I think is timely for us right now to hear from another one of those cabinet members who is doing, I think, an extraordinary job this year. In particular, gave her a new program of work as Chief of District Operations. A lot of passion and knowledge that she brings to the work, along with our own inimitable Fred Wagstaff. So together, in about 3 or 4 slides, they will go through first the technical part of the work, kind of what our safety protocols are, all of which you're familiar with. But what I wanted to also add this evening is the additional layers of really, really substantive new relationships, a whole child, holistic approach, proactive approach to student discipline and safety and security that we have built into our safety and security plan. So with no further comment from me, Dr. Cassandra Wright will lead the discussion, and we look forward to engaging with you this afternoon. Dr. Wright.
Thank you, Dr. Cash, and Happy New Year, everyone. Before I begin, I just want to share something with you all. Yesterday, during our cabinet meeting, Dr. Cash shared 7 rules of life. So he often shares quotes and pieces of literature with us that will resonate in what we do for the children here in the city of Buffalo. And it just made me think that as we continue to exist together during these surreal times, COVID reaching all-time highs, the increased mental health issues that have led to increased violence in the community, racial unrest, and just wicked social media trends, we can't forget the seemingly little blessings that we take for granted, like activity of our limbs, our robust intelligence and imagination, family, friends. Now, according to the 7 rules, we must always remember to smile. We must be kind to each other. We must always be persistent. There's no giving up. We don't compare. I am uniquely designed just like you are uniquely designed. We need to avoid negativity, make peace with our past, and take care of our body and our mind. If we do this, we will really have a happy new year. We're not just saying it, we make it happen. We can make our new year happen. What I want you all to know is that my esteemed colleagues that I serve side by side with are absolutely committed to having the best year yet. Every year we say that it's going to be the best year yet. That's what we're committed to do. So tonight, Executive Director Wagstaff and I are going to talk about the proactive work that we do with others in the cabinet, within the schools, and our community, so that Buffalo Schools community is safe and whole and actually able to operationalize those 7 rules of life. We work side by side with others to examine safety, and operations of the district in ways that contribute to enhanced systems and protocols. The document that Executive Director Wagstaff will thoroughly explain is just a small portion of our work, but it is absolutely critical. The most important part of our work is proactive and holistic. It's the work that we do that's aimed at decreasing the need for the critical response document. So, we all have fire alarms and carbon monoxide detectors in our home. But what you do is the work on the front end to make sure that they don't go off. So Fred is going to talk to you about the document, the emergency response to critical situations document. He's also going to highlight some key points that it's very important for everyone to know and understand. Director Wagstaff?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Wright. Good evening, board members and members of the community, and Dr. Cash. Thankful to be here presenting to you today. Just want to go over a few items in regards to emergency response to critical situations, otherwise known as our district-wide safety plan. Now, the emergency response, let me just explain, the emergency response to critical situations, or our district-wide safety plan, is also monitored and mandated by the New York State Education Department. Every year we have to submit our safety plans for each and every school, building, and site, Buffalo Public School building and site, to New York State to make sure that it's in alliance with state guidelines. I'm just going to talk about a few points here in reference to it. Can everybody hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you, Fred.
We can hear you, but your camera is off.
I'm sorry?
We can hear you, but your camera is off.
Can you see me now? Good evening.
We can see and hear you.
All set? Okay,
All
great.
set.
The emergency critical situations. If you look there, it's on the district website for everyone, board members, staff members, and of course the community members. The BPS family is most important that everybody that has a student at Buffalo Public Schools go over this with their children. It's very important because it explains what we do in these type of situations and emergencies and so forth. On page 6, you will see that it lists who is notified in the case of emergencies. It's very important that cabinet members, as well as Dr. Cash, is notified on every type of emergency, because these emergencies can have adverse effects throughout the whole district. So to mitigate the effects of the emergencies in one location, all department heads are notified and a plan is put in action. Safety protocols, very important, very important. On page 8, you will see we have drills that we conduct. The safety drills are conducted 4 times a year with the Buffalo Police Department. That's a drill such as a lockdown drill. It's very important that we rehearse these with our children. The drills are subject to change due to the recommendation of Buffalo Police Department. Let me explain something. When we have a crisis in a school, with our collaboration with Buffalo Police Department through the Buffalo Police Department SRO division, police is normally on at any school in the city within 2 to 3 minutes for any crisis. The type of drills that we go over with the students are shelter in place, lockout, lockdown, and as we have done for centuries, fire drills. In regards to the emergency safety drills that I just explained to you, from the teacher standpoint, letters are sent to parents and guardians notifying them of all scheduled drills. Grade level teacher strips are broken down for age appropriate for each grade. It's very important. After each drill, teachers will also be required to conduct a debriefing with their students. I must say this. This was before COVID, before maybe December of 2019. I was at a school with ESL students. It had to be third grade, and for some reason, they did not hear the announcement that we were doing a drill. When I went to check on the classroom and told the teacher that they have to perform the drill, it took a second grade class of ESL students probably 9 seconds to be out of sight and out of mind. That tells me that that teacher rehearsed with that class, and that could save a life. It's very important. Another item in the district-wide safety plan or the emergency response to critical situations, and something that we unfortunately have to deal with, is elopement. And that's a student leaving the school unauthorized. We have some who are at greater risk or prone to elopement, and they have identification items that we give them, identification badges or tags or bus pass, or it indicates it on the bus pass. The building staff has a roster of students who are prone to elopement. This is for the student safety. Classrooms are equipped with some form, in the high-risk classrooms, they're equipped with some form of alarm system on the door, a bell, or chime to alert the school personnel of a student who has eloped out of the school or a classroom. Next is emergency school closing due to building-related problems. Sometimes, unfortunately, we have situations where there's maybe a leak in the building, or no heat, no power, water issues, what have you. One of the great things in working with the transportation department, and that's Cheryl Kennedy and staff, we can have enough buses to a school to transport students to an evacuation site within 25 minutes. That's anywhere in the city of Buffalo. And that's by working with the transportation department, and they working with First Student to get those buses to that school. However, if their evacuation site is within walking distance, with the assistance of Buffalo Police Department and school staff, we will escort the school students to their evacuation site. Now, that's just some of the things in the emergency response to critical situation booklet or plan, or the safety plan. I would advise every board member, every community member, every parent to please go over it. It's very important, especially in this day and times that we're faced with now, in the education world, as well as in our neighborhood community.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your time.
And Mayor, could you go to, I think it may be slide number 5. Thank you so much, Fred. Outstanding.
You're welcome.
There you go, right there. So for my portion of the presentation, I would like to talk about some of the work that we do behind the scenes, so that the need for those emergency responses are greatly diminished. The goal is to not have to have an emergency response to a critical situation. So in order for that to happen, a lot of work has to go into it. And we have established recursive communication loops with principals, supporting principals with systems that help kids thrive in a safe and nurturing environment is always our key focus. So whether it is operating in the under the title of Chief of School Operations, Chief Academic Officer, Chief of Student Supports, the goal is to make sure that children are safe, thriving in a nurturing environment. So in order for that to happen, we have to talk to the principals. One of the strategies we utilize is called the Principals Advisory Committee. So each month, I meet with BCSA Association leadership to discuss district-wide issues. So when principals see a trend and a gap in the system, they allow the BCSA Association leads know about it, then they present that issue to me. So while we have a scheduled monthly meeting, we still meet frequently as issues arise. There's no way we would want to wait 30 days for a meeting versus address it immediately. So I text the BCSA association leads and keep them in the loop regarding our response to their concerns. They reach out to me and say, hey, we need for cabinet members and district personnel to address this. And the goal is always to problem solve and coordinate with my fellow cabinet members so that we can bring a resolution to any issue they give to us within 24 to 48 hours if it's a more simple issue, maybe a little bit longer if it's quite complex. But we take those concerns and we address them with a great sense of urgency. Principals have the ability to reach out to staff, cabinet, 7 days a week, any time of the day. We are always on duty to serve our principals and support them to make sure that they are able to operate effectively, efficiently, and safely. I can't say it enough. Principals have unlimited access to me and every last one of my colleagues. We also have developed culture walks. So I have paired with Dr. Williams, who has developed a tool to evaluate culture and climate of a building from the perspective of a parent or community member. So what is it with that lens? What is it that I see when I first walk into the building? What is it that I feel? And at the conclusion of those walks, we just have a dialogue with the principals and make sure that they have everything that they need to be successful. Communicating with the principals and the schools is just one part of what I need to do, my colleagues need to do to ensure that our buildings are safe. I know I heard the conversation about some safety concerns. I do need to emphasize that by and large, every last one of our buildings is safe. So when you're thinking about a district that has 31,000 plus students, another 7,000 plus adults, and you get one or two critical situations in a year, those schools are safe. Now, we do have incidences that occur. They're occurring in the community. Ergo, as we've said so many times, schools being a microcosm of the community, they will at times seep into the schools. When that happens, we alert key staff members immediately. The associates alert me. I alert Dr. Cash and key cabinet members. Dr. Cash alerts cabinet and board members when appropriate. Our goal is always to be completely transparent in everything that we do to ensure the safety and welfare of everyone who works within the BPS community. No secrets. In order for that to happen, I have to have relationships with various entities within our city. See, because if we are part of the community has to be a part of the solution. I have to tell you that I work very closely with the Buffalo Police Department, and I can't help but give a shout out to Chief Young and Lieutenant Craig and their SROs. If you ever want to see law enforcement that is so dedicated to the staff and the children in the city of Buffalo, you have to see Buffalo Police Department work within the confines of our school buildings and our communities. They do not criminalize our children. What they do is they care for and create boundaries so that they are safe. I can say the same thing for the NFTA when I work with Chief Gast and Captain Holiday and the District Attorney's Office with ADA Danielle Diabato. We have formed a relationship where there is open dialogue, where we can problem solve together so that we can ensure that the most precious people in any culture, which is our children, are safe and heard. I have weekly meetings. They are our version of CompStat meetings with Chief Young and Lieutenant Craig and Executive Director Wagstaff, and we look at our data. We are informed of high-risk incidences within the communities that may bleed into our schools. We act proactively to ensure that every child is safe, even the child that's acting out. We've had incidences wherein we've had to send an SRO to pick up a child from school and escort him safely to home. Again, this is a proactive and whole child approach to ensuring our children are safe and they are well. School and security administration have greater presence at our bus and our train stops. So I know you all recall in the beginning of the year, we were having a time with our kids. And then we developed systems, we developed relationships, we developed protocols to help them understand that you need to be safe from your doorstep to the school, within the school, back to your doorstep. The principals in the downtown area, they got together, they problem solved, and they developed staggered dismissals. We have on-site crisis management by Buffalo Police Department to bring order and safety and support. And most of all, we have our SST team to ensure that the emotional needs of not only our children, but their families are addressed in this wraparound support so that the behaviors are not continuous. So we may see another behavior and another behavior, but the goal is for there to not be another one and another one. So again, we live with our past, remember? Those 7 rules, it happened, now let's move forward. That's our attitude when we're dealing with our children from a safety and security perspective. Most recently, we have been developing a more robust parent advisory committee. So for example, when Dr. Cash made the determination that we would return to in-person learning, he didn't do that in a vacuum. He made sure that the voices of all of our constituents were heard. Dr. Reynolds reached out to the parent groups. He heard from everyone and then was able to make an informed decision. There's nothing that we do from the safety and security perspective that doesn't take the parents' needs to make sure that their child is safe into consideration. Anyone who is a parent or a grandparent, you know that there is an absolutely visceral response when you feel like your child could be in danger. What I want you to know is I too am a parent and grandparent whose children have gone through Buffalo Public Schools, whose grandchildren who are now in Buffalo Public Schools. I have a vested interest, as do my fellow cabinet members. I just want to conclude by saying that, yes, we have an emergency response to critical situations, document and protocol. We do. The state mandates that. That's fine. However, the deep work comes when me, Fred, and every last one of my cabinet members make sure that they are available to support students and families 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365, 66 in a leap year, days to ensure that children are safe. We really appreciate this opportunity to share with you our passion around the safety and welfare of our children, and we look forward to questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Cassandra. Really, really well done, Dr. Wright. Thank you. Ms. Woods, if I could just make one comment before I turn it back to you.
Please do.
You can start the discussion. Colleagues, one of the things that we've been trying to do, really hard working at it, is we have 31,000 children. What tends to happen in my experience is that when one negative event that rises to the level of a 4 or 5 violation of our code of conduct, the media, the community sometimes unwittingly or wittingly drive that up the flagpole and then cast a very negative pall, P-A-L-L, over the district as if this is how all the children behave all the time. And so with this rejiggered, restructured, holistic approach, we take each case and we make sure we are conferring with the kid. We are going through our restorative practices, efforts with our children and with families, so that we can try to heal and restore and bring back on path, get back in the saddle. And that other incident, you know, depending on what it is, it's a new day. It's a new day. And I would just caution, because I've seen it too many times. We see it now in the nation and in the country, that urban districts start to get pigeonholed as places that are unrecoverable. All the kids are feral and acting out all the time, and on and on and on. And I hear that narrative even when I'm talking casually with folks who've never been in any of our schools, but it starts to seep out, and that's how they view. And I said, well, where did you get that viewpoint from? And said, well, I see it on the news. You know, I heard it from a neighbor, that kind of thing. So colleagues, it's very important while we go through one of the most difficult, searing, emotional, psychological times of our lifetime, that we not paint anybody. That's why I applaud Dr. Cassandra Wright with saying those 7 habits of life that she shared, by Maya Angelou, by the way, that everybody's human. Almost everybody knows somebody that is struggling psychologically, emotionally, perhaps a mental health issue that has presented itself in a big way, but they're human and they deserve our compassion. They deserve our support. especially our children. And so that's how we're approaching this. Yes, there have been some serious incidents. Yes, we have issues with social media that are very different now and can be disturbing, but we cannot paint all of the children that way, because the great majority, I say 97, 98%, of the children, the data's right here in front of me, are doing what they're supposed to do every day. Every day, they're doing what they're supposed to do. And they're doing a great job at it. And I want to commend that group of students and lift them up as examples for how we can help their brothers and sisters continue to get well and do a little better. And we're here to support that. It's not about arrest, transport, well, first handcuff, arrest, transport, fingerprint, and then put into the system. See, that's what can happen during this type of time if we treat it the way it's typically treated. And we're trying to treat it the way it needs to be treated. And that's through a very healing, very restorative process. And you always have a chance to come again. But that's where we need the community board, and that's where I need you to help us in your social media to say there is another responsibility and accountability here. Yes, we have our accountability, but parents and households and family, you have accountability too for your children, And so if we work all together on this, we can get us through this difficult period and get back to healing, progressing, and then thriving. All right, so thank you again for that really wonderful presentation, Fred and Cassandra. Now, Ms. Woods, I turn it back to you, and thank you for giving us this time. Thank you.
Thank each of you for your presentation, and now we will have questions from our board, because this is a very important topic, the mental health and issues on our children. The first hand I see is our resident psychologist, Board Member Scott. Board Member Scott.
Thank you, Chairwoman Woods. I didn't realize I was muted still. First, I just want to elaborate on Dr. Cash's insight that he just shared. In education, you commonly hear this characterization that 10% of students cause 90% of your problems. I think that's usually the case in almost any school that you're in. Based on my experience this year with COVID, the interrupted schooling last year, isolation that our students faced, I would say that percentage has expanded to 15, maybe 20%, given the school, that are causing a majority of the problems, and it's more frequent and more intense from that smaller percentage. So it's obviously putting demand on an entire school building when that percentage grows and the misbehavior is more frequent and more intense. But back to the presentation, Dr. Wright and Mr. Wagstaff, thank you for taking the time to provide us this information. I think it's very helpful, very timely. First, just some general questions, and then I have a specific school-related point and question that I have. We've had, I know, some difficulty with staffing in all areas, and I know with security, we've had some challenges. Just want to get a sense of where we are as far as staffing for security, as well as how many SROs are working with our schools at this time.
Thank you for that question. So regarding staffing for security, we have onboarded 7 additional security guards. While that has happened, 3 have gone out for COVID and other illnesses or leaves. So we are in a continuous process of onboarding additional security officers. We are going to have another hiring event. What we have found is that the process, and everyone is facing this, people, man, systems, and when people are sick or not able to work, the systems have a lag. So there was a bit of a lag in the system to get people onboarded. We're finding that things are picking up again. So it is our hope to be able to onboard at least 7 more security officers as soon as possible.
And how are the security officers assigned? Are they assigned to all of our high schools, and how many at each high school?
They are assigned to all of our high schools, and the number of security officers tend to match the number of students. However, if you have school A with 600 kids and 3 security officers with low incidences, and school B with 600 children, high incidences, you may need 5 security officers there. So the combination of number of students that have to be serviced and number of incidences that occur within a building.
And then as far as SROs go, how many of those do we have that are trained and working consistently with our schools?
Oh, we have 9. And I have to say again, these SROs are very well trained to interact with adolescent students. It would be amazing if I could just videotape how they talk to and de-escalate our children, give them a ride home, talk to the family, connect with me and Dr. Williams, Dr. Reynolds to see what supports the families need. That's the type of work that these people do under the leadership of Chief Young and Lieutenant Craig. Every last one of them are first in class.
Yes, and I would also add, give credit to our BPS security. My interactions with them are always positive. My son at Performing Arts mentions them, interactions he has with them that are always positive. So they certainly play an important, at times, mentoring role for our students and in our schools.
Absolutely.
And I'm happy to hear too that we're working, it sounds like, daily with BPD and with Erie County when necessary, and they're not operating in a vacuum without us being a part of decision making with our kids. So more specifically, I have been hearing from some staff, a couple parents from iPrep, and I don't have data obviously on this, but it does seem like there's been an uptick in threats, concerns related to security over at iPrep. It's been mentioned that many times they don't have any security on staff, and they should have 3, just like some of the other high schools. And it seems, for example, I guess the day of the TikTok insidious message that went out, it was reported that they didn't have any BPS security presence or any BPD presence when we sent out a message indicating that we were going to be having BPD on patrol at some of our schools on that day that threat was made. So any insight on what's going on with iPrep and anything we can do, if that is actually the case, what we can do to change that?
So allow me to share the facts. There is never a day where there are 0 security officers within a building, never. I work daily, again, very closely with the high school associates, and they let me know when there's a challenge. And we do whatever we can do to make sure that that challenge no longer exists. So I don't know how many, I don't know, but there is never a day where there are 0 security officers. That doesn't happen. Now, to the point about Buffalo Police, I'm not sure why they thought they were going to have an SRO in their building. I only have about 8 of them or 9 of them, and they have absences too. So that's a perfect attendance. I have more than 16 schools. And then, in addition to that, various sites. We simply don't have that level of manpower for there to be an SRO assigned to every single building. What did happen was the Buffalo Police Department was absolutely on high alert for all of our buildings, not just IPREP, not just, I won't name another one, but not just any, like for every single building. They took the threats seriously. Now they work in conjunction with other federal agencies to evaluate the veracity of a threat. So while there was those, and I talked about it earlier, those social media threats are absolutely wicked, but we have reliable intel that they were baseless because they were investigated seriously. So I'm so sorry that there is a perception that they weren't protected, that people weren't thinking about them, but I want them to hear me now and know there is no member of this cabinet that doesn't think about every single school, every single teacher, every single child to ensure that our community is safe every single day.
Now, before we leave Larry's line of questioning, I do want to clarify something, because Larry, I think, is asking a series of questions that I want to make clear and don't want to confuse the listening audience. I think, Dr. Wright, you're talking primarily about high schools. I don't know that every single school has a security officer, certainly not to my knowledge. But
correct.
At the high school level,
yes,
and at some of the higher incident elementary schools, I believe we have deployed a security officer or security personnel here and there. But all of the schools, all 60 don't have at least one security officer. So I want to make that clear. And on that day, when we had that TikTok threat, I think that some schools thought that we had messaged that every school would have at least a security officer. So my apologies if we mismessaged that day on that. But I will say, and this is what's important to Larry's point about IPREP and other schools, you look at the incidences and you look at, and we have the data now. This is one of the great things that Ebony Bullock and her team are providing for us on a daily basis. Daily is, what are the incidents? How many of them are there? Where are they happening? What are the top 10 high schools and the top 10 elementary schools that have high incidence? And those schools should have redeployment on a regular basis if they get below a certain level, right? A school like IPREP, and I don't like to call out the names, but a school like IPREP right now, today, in this period that we've been in, should never have 0 and probably should always have at least 2 or 3 security officers, even if they're not available because of being out sick or because of absences, then we redeploy, see, for that day, because they're right there with these daily kind of things. So I hope, Mr. Scott, that we're trying to clarify some of this for you, but we try to deploy based on the size of the school, and then the incidents are the next layer of analysis. So it's not like, every school has one nurse, every school has one security guard, every school has one. We try to triage that response and use our data to make daily decisions about where additional coverage might be needed for that day.
Yes, thank you for that response, Dr. Cash and Dr. Wright. It makes sense. I agree with it completely. And I wasn't on the TikTok day expecting that police were going to be at every school. But as you acknowledged, the way it was messaged, I think may have been misconstrued. And many people came to me and said, we didn't have police at our schools.
Right.
So thank you for acknowledging that and for the response. It makes sense. It's evidence-based and logical. So thank you.
You're welcome. And Admir, I would recommend, unless the board members want to keep up the slides, because maybe you want to refer to some, I'd recommend we take those down and then, or at least minimize it so we can all see each other. There you go. All right.
Larry, concludes your questions, or you have some more?
That concludes my questions. Thank you, Chairwoman Woods. Thank you.
Board members, any other board members want to raise some questions about incidences, security at their schools, or something you may have a question? Let's see.
Yes, Ms. Woods.
Okay, I see Sharon Belton-Cotman, and then
Terrence was up first. I'm sorry.
Okay, then Terrence Hurd, and then our President Emeritus.
Sister Belton, you can go ahead and go first.
Thank you. So I've gone on record to say that I'm very concerned. I'm even thinking about drafting a letter because of the gang activity that is currently in our schools. And so what I'm looking for is, I would like to see the plan to address the gang activity and the recent rash of things that have been going on in our schools as a result of this. I don't necessarily want to air our dirty laundry, but I'm looking for the safety measures, or what plans do we have when we run into this gang situation? How does each school address it, or how is it being addressed? I am particularly concerned because I have had, within the past 2 weeks, or not with the vacation, but prior to vacation, parents reach out and say that they have tried to address the concern with principals, and they don't feel that their concerns were taken seriously, and then things escalated into issues. So what I'm looking for is the written protocol or the procedure. What happens when a child comes with a complaint of a bullying? What happens when a student talks about they've been sexually assaulted? I'm looking for that type of procedural manual or guideline so that there's uniformity in this district. I'm dealing with a mother now who went to the principal 3 weeks before anything ever happened. And she has, since the tables have been turned on her child. So I'm concerned about that. When we talk about we only have 9 SROs and they take days off, then I wonder why we don't have 12 or trained or 14 trained SROs, so that when one takes off, another one can slide into that slot. I'm wondering things like that. I'm concerned because we talked about putting 17 security officers in place. 7 were talked about in July, an additional 10 at that point. And we talked about putting 17. And so what I'm hearing is that, yes, we only have a few bad apples, but those bad apples have escalated to the level that in many cases, they have basically taken over some of our buildings during certain times of the day. And for people to reach out to me and say, Mrs. Cotman, you guys have got to get on this and get on it fast, because these kids are becoming more and more aggressive. And we saw that back in September when we saw the gang members attack our police officers. So we realize that there's a higher level of going on in our schools. And I want to know what procedures are in place so that there's uniformity, and how do we move forward? There has to be something written so that if a principal can follow protocol A, B, C, and D, and that's what I'm looking for. In addition to that, I would like to see what the report looks like. If the data is out there for each one of our schools on what's going on a daily basis, including with COVID, particularly when we have quarantine classrooms in our buildings, that the board knows nothing about, that we receive a report that tells us how many built rooms are quarantined in a building. I want to know that about my schools. I'm sure other board members would like to know. And I want to know what type of activities are happening in our schools. I'm also being told that our parents are no longer reporting to the principals, but they're going now to the police. And one of the lieutenants at the precinct on Bailey told me about a mother who came in not too long ago who did not feel comfortable with reporting it to the school, and she reported it. But I want to know what happens in those incidents. Does the police notify us? So I have a lot of questions. When we talk about the majority of our students are functioning and doing what they're supposed to do, that's what we expect. But we do know that one bad apple can spoil a bunch. And I do not want a situation where we have one more incident. In my opinion, 3 guns in a 6-month period is more than enough for me to stomach at this point. It is time for us to just ask these questions. Where are the written protocols so that everyone is on the same page on what to do when these incidents happen, other than what you presented today is what I'm looking for. Thank you.
So we do have a code of conduct, and so when incidences arise, the principals refer to the code of conduct in order to address them. There is no such document that would codify every little incident that occurs, but the code of conduct is a great start. The principals are also encouraged to reach out to Fred, myself, their associates, other cabinet members for guidance when they have these situations that don't quite fit in the codified manual. But we do have written protocols. We do have written policies on how we address situations.
So how do we know that it has happened? How does a parent know that if she brings a complaint to a principal, that it is being handled? In other words, what steps are being done? Is a report written out? Does the principal go in and complete a report that says this parent brought this complaint to me and this is a concern? How does this work? Because in these 2 particular cases, okay, I think things could have been avoided if certain things had been done, and we could have probably stopped violence in the schools. Okay, but in essence, what they're telling me is that they went to the principal, they sent the information to the principal, and nothing happened from their perspective. So when I'm looking for some sort of a system in place to make sure that if a parent has a concern, that is documented, and that even if it's and we're working on it. And I don't think that's unfair, because the good children, or the children who don't know how to work the system, are the ones often that are victimized by the system. The ones that are smart enough to know what to do and not to do, they know how to work the system pretty well. Okay, they know how to work it.
Right, so there's also the DASA protocol.
The what?
DASA. There's a protocol that's very specific to protecting children who feel that they are being victimized, being bullied. And so the principals are trained in that, and they are taught how to follow that protocol, and those incidences are codified. Now, I have to tell you, sometimes a parent will say, my child is being bullied, but there's a very strict criteria for what bullying really is. And so while they think it's bullying, it may not fall under that criteria. However, the principal always addresses, to the best of their ability, every single situation that a parent comes to them with. Now, do sometimes 1 or 2 incidences, as you have stated, fall through the cracks? Yes, they do. And when they come to you, just please, when it comes to the safety of our children, simply refer them to me. And I'll work together side by side with the security officers that Mr. Scott has already identified as being very, very instrumental, because they know their kids, the principals, Dr. Williams, everyone that needs to be a part of the conversation in that room. That will happen. Please refer people to me. So
I have
that
no
can
problem
get
referring them
more
to you.
attention.
But my biggest fear is that the one that's does not get addressed when it should happen as soon as possible is the one that ends up on the front page of the paper, and it paints a whole picture of what's going on. For whatever reason, okay, every child is not being checked in our schools at this point. Okay, so we know that girls are carrying weapons for boys, or if they're not carrying, they're carrying contraband. So as a board, we have not seen a suspension report. We have not seen a violence report. We have not seen anything. So when people come to me talking to me, you know, I don't know if this is one isolated event or if there are 10 of them and we're just not aware of them. Okay, these are reports. These are reports that we've always had in place prior to recent years.
Understood. Ms. Cotman, that information is at the tip of every board member's fingers, and it's located in our data dashboard.
So we are to do, so you want board members who make $15,000 a year to put together reports that we have women that work full-time, wait a minute, we that work full-time, got kids, and when it's as simple as providing us with a monthly report every month.
Okay, so to answer that question, I'm going to go back to the 7 rules that I discussed earlier. We're not going to compare ourselves to each other. I don't know anything about what a board member does throughout their day, how much they make. I'm not sure if it's even relevant to this.
It's relevant to me.
What I am saying is, unless we give you reports every single day, which would be not
every day.
One moment, please.
Mm-hmm.
Every single day, that could be done, I suppose. I don't know if you want people to use their time for that. I am saying that at a click of a button, we have made sure that the data are absolutely transparent every single day. And it's so easy. And I promise you, if you would like another session so that we can, again, go through the data dashboard, we can do that. But that data every single day, it refreshes so that people know with great transparency what's going on. We don't have anything to hide.
I'm not saying you have anything to hide. What I'm saying is that in regards to the function of the board, okay, I don't think it's unrealistic to have expectations that on a monthly basis that the board receives a report that talks about attendance, talks about suspension, that talks about the level of violence in our schools. I don't think that that's unreasonable. And whether it's at our fingertip or not, okay, in a given day, okay, my day starts at 8 o'clock in the morning, about 8:10 almost every morning with people calling me, okay? And to expect, I'm just asking for basic information, basic reports, transparency to be provided for the board. That's what I'm asking for. That's it. Now, I'm not saying you're hiding it, but I don't understand why, if these reports exist, why the board can't have them on a regular basis moving forward. Okay, and then back to my issue is that I believe that the principals in a given day have a lot on their plate. My concern is the one incident that does not get addressed and ends up on the front page that paints the picture for our entire district. That's what my concern is.
I understand.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have any other questions, Board Member Cotman?
No, thank you.
Okay, Dr. Wright, was Ms. Cotman's question about the difference between data and information clear, that going daily to look up information for the board members versus a monthly report? One is data, the other is information, is very helpful.
If you click on the data dashboard, it's right there. It's up to date. It's real time information.
It might be
you can do
right
it once
there,
a month.
Larry.
You can do it every day. You can do it every week.
Larry, you have the time to do that because maybe you sit at a desk and you don't have maybe 10 calls coming at you on a given day. Okay.
But you click on it and it appears.
It doesn't
It's
matter.
not a matter of
It's a
time.
request
There's no
from the
time
board, and
invested
it's
in it.
not for you to determine whether it should be done or not. It's not you to determine it.
It's an unrealistic expectation for staff.
It is not unrealistic when we have always had these reports. What's wrong with you? You should be able to go back for 12 months and see what's going on in this district.
Okay.
Who's got something to say?
Board members, I think Ms. Wright, Dr. Wright, already is aware of the concern and is going to address the request. We have a question, hand up from Board Member Mercosi. Jen?
I wanted to kind of just get an idea of, I know what's in place, the code of conduct and the whole nine. Being someone who, way before I became on the board, helped to put the code of conduct together from the community perspective, there's some miscommunication. Maybe it's miscommunication. Maybe it just hasn't happened yet. But the uniformity around how the code of conduct is being implemented across the board, right? Whether, you know, we see the tiers, we know if an incident occurs, we can refer to it for that particular incident. But when the autonomy is given to the principals and the principals alone, sometimes certain things, and we know this, sometimes principals address, you know, according to the code of conduct, sometimes due to the situation, they veer from it. So that's when I start receiving the calls around how things are handled in different schools, maybe very similar incidents, but they're handled in different ways. When does the district step in? And if it does already, I'm not sure, like, how is this code of conduct implemented where the district comes in and says, look, across the board, this is how we do. The principals do have autonomy throughout their, you know, it is their school. I'm not trying to take that away. But the confusion lies in, you know, kids are going in their own families. They're going to different schools. They might be experiencing same situations, but completely different circumstances around, you know, trying to solve those situations, whether it's restorative practices not being so much up to date in one school, whether it's just the so-called disciplinary actions. You know, friends see things happening all the time. So I know we can't do it in this session, but if there's a way to really communicate to community around how we implement the code of conduct, because that's the narrative. This school doesn't do this, so they don't care about it. This teacher, principal doesn't, you know, it makes principals look like they're inadequate or they just don't care. And then the ones who do care, they're not getting recognized for the great work that they do around it. So I feel like we're missing the opportunities to really uplift best practices, as well as maybe, you know, helping coach the principals who may not be working to the standards of other principals. You see what I'm saying? It comes up enough, and I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just saying in this like time of really digging in, you know, I'm hoping that that happens. And if it's already happening in some way, shape, or form, you know, help me help other people understand. And then also before the end of the evening, I do have a couple questions around, and spoke with Dr. Williams about this earlier. So I just want to do, if possible, an update about these home tests and some of the questions people have. I saw a website went up, or some information went up to answer some of the questions we've all been receiving. And I just want to make sure we address that. But we are on point with this, and just want to let folks know because texting is going a little crazy right now. Thank you.
I'm going to, colleagues, let Dr. Wright and Dr. Williams respond to you. They have a lot to say about the questions. It's a good one, Ms. McCosey, we appreciate it. But let me say this first about culture. The whole issue here, and Dr. Wright alluded to it, is we have a culture that if you have any question whatsoever about an issue that comes in front of you, the principals do get a myriad of challenges on a daily basis. We have a culture where you pick up the phone and you can call your ASL. or you can call Dr. Williams directly if it feels like it's in her multiple wheelhouses, or you can call Dr. Wright directly and she will give you good guidance. Dr. Williams will give you good guidance. ASLs are in touch with me a lot of times and have a question, and I will give them my best guidance. So that's the culture we have. And so it's anything that's reported to us or comes to our attention, we are on it immediately. Immediately. Now, I say that to say that sometimes we're not made aware. And if we're not made aware, there can be things that languish or go unaddressed, or at least unaddressed properly. And when I find that out, sometimes I'll launch an investigation. I'll say, I want that investigated. I want that principal put on leave, and we're going to get to the bottom of it so that it doesn't happen again. Can't happen like that. Not like that. Not on that issue. See? You get an elopement, a kid walk off the door, back door, side door, something like that. Okay, we're going to pull the kid back. We're going to talk about what's going on, try to get at what's going on with that child. But sexual assault and guns, loaded guns, or anything of that nature, we find out about that, we're on top of that. Now, if we don't know about it, well then there's a gap there. Somebody needs to help. What I find is there's not very many of those cases because parents will talk, kids will talk, trust pays. That's kind of the culture we have too. So somebody's going to talk to somebody. And if they talk to you, then you tell us. Don't let it sit and keep building up, and then we find about it in a board meeting. Tell us right away. And so that's what we're talking about here, guys. We have a culture. I've established that since I've been here. And so we know something, we're on something right away. Now, Cassandra and Tanja, if you could answer, because we do have varying degrees of experience among our young cohort of novice principals. Many of them are novice. And even some of the veterans get shook sometimes, and they need additional support, and we help them. So answer that, Tanja, what Mr. Cozy was asking.
Before we address that, I want to make clear, I was referring to the code of conduct. I wasn't referring to certain incidences, just how the code of conduct is implemented where some schools are doing things that other schools are, you know what I mean? Situations
it relates to that. It relates to that.
But when you said sexual, like assaults, and if I hear something like that, I'm coming directly. You guys are probably sick of me at this point because I come to all you.
No,
I just wanted to be sure that you knew I was referring to the code of conduct.
What I'm trying to say is some of those can get through and get by us. Okay? Not a lot, but some do. And that's all and then what do we do is what we're talking about. So go ahead, Tanja, and the way you heard the question, how would you respond? And Tanja, you work with your colleague there. Okay?
Okay. So I want to start by saying, first, I think we have a very good code of conduct. There are districts across the nation that have taken a look at our code of conduct and have, implemented many of the pieces that we have in our code in their own districts. When it comes to infractions, when we talk about a level 4, which is the highest level, which, when students do something to violate a level 4 infraction, ends up being a longer term suspension and there's a due process hearing. We have a very experienced person, Mr. O'Grady, who oversees our Office of Pupil Personnel Services, and he works real closely with principals. And so when principals believe that something has reached a level 4 and they send the paperwork in, if in fact it has not reached a level 4 according to our code of conduct, he works with that principal to ensure that it goes back to a level 3 or a level 2 or level 1. We've done training with our principals. We have it recorded. We did a virtual training with them so that they understand what the difference is between a level 3 and a level 4. Certainly for those lower level infractions, levels 1 or 2, principals do have the authority to say, rather than to do an out-of-school suspension for this, we believe that this is something that can be resolved restoratively, and they may elect to do that. But when something is really serious and it reaches that level 4 infraction,
then that's where we're involved. That's where City Hall gets involved. And that's where Pupil Personnel Services, because they have the responsibility of looking at every single hearing that is requested and making sure that it meets the level 4 infraction. If it doesn't, then we turn them back and we work with the principal to see how we can support, still issuing whatever is needed, but it doesn't meet the level of a level 4.
Jen, did that answer your question? Or Cassandra, you, Dr. Reddy, you going to add to that?
Oh, no, I think Dr. Williams did a great job. Actually, the code of conduct is in her wheelhouse. So I appreciate that she came in and tag teamed with me. Thank you, Dr. Williams.
It did. I definitely, if it's all right with the two of you or with you, Dr. Williams, I would like to reach out with some, you did clarify some things, but some things I just have a little question about now. It's not something I'm going to just bring up now. Let's just talk later.
That would be great. So again, we always invite these conversations because we're always sharpening our programs of work. So anything that you can speak to us about that will just make us better, we want to hear it.
Okay, Terrence, I'm sorry I skipped over you. You had raised your hand previously. Do you have a question that you wanted to ask?
Thank you, Chairwoman Woods. It's okay, ladies first. I'd like to have a conversation. I have a couple of questions, so please bear with me. But I want to have a conversation. My first conversation, I had this brought to me, the last 2 years and just recently about teachers and with discipline. And there were teachers that were breaking up fights. And I just recently received another complaint from a teacher who swore that they would not break up another fight again inside of a classroom, inside of a building, because they were told not to, or they were told that this is not their concern, or they try to get between students that were about to come into a conflict with one another, and others wouldn't assist to help to stop the conflict because of school rules or rules that stated that that they can't do that. And I had a teacher that said they were looking for assistance from another member inside their school, inside the building, and didn't receive that. And they got hurt doing the incident and swore that they'll never do it again. So if they see children getting into altercations or violence start stemming up, they'll call security and walk away. And I don't think that's a great morale to have amongst teachers. As being a former educator, I frequently was involved in the middle of fights, and as in conflict resolution, as in working conflict resolution under Robert Barton over at Seneca. That was a school where violence, where I went to school at, where violence was a mainstay because of gang violence and activity that was in the surrounding areas that flowed into the schools on a daily basis. More than weapons were found, in schools outside of school. So can we just have that first conversation about the teachers' discipline? What do we do about these teachers? How can we build a morale back up for these type of teachers and their attitudes, and what can be done to help assist teachers that may feel as if that they are put in the emphasis not on the student's health and wellness, but to help address their needs and talk to them, maybe a session for them?
So I think that, Dr. Williams, you wanted to address this?
No, please.
Okay. I think that no matter what organization you're working with, there will always be a few people who may be bitter or resistant. I'm not sure how much effort you want to spend in that area outside of understanding. I can tell you, I never broke up a fight. I'm on the petite side, so I never stepped in. However, there are always people around me who did. I think that it's okay if someone says, I'm not going to break up a fight. It's okay. That's okay. It's not the expectation. Again, we're developing cultures wherein the fight shouldn't occur in the first place. God forbid, once they do, then hopefully in addition to the security officers and administration, there'll be people who are able to help. And to my knowledge, someone always helps. For the few teachers who have decided that it is their mission not to, that's their prerogative, that's okay. But what I do want to say is the vast majority of our administrators, educators, security officers, they step in to prevent, to dissolve, to bring resolution, and to bring restoration. That's been my experience.
And if I can just add, we spent a lot of time training teachers in restorative practices, training teachers in trauma-informed care. Dr. Morrell does a marvelous job, training teachers to build the engagement, in CLRI. And when you have a relationship with children, I mean, I've worked at some really, some challenging buildings where, there were, gangs and different things. But when you have a relationship with children, sometimes them just hearing your voice, they don't want to hurt you, and they don't want you to get hurt. They don't want you disappointed if they have a relationship with you. So that's why we spend so much time, with folks on building those relationships, because we don't want teachers getting hurt. Teachers, they, go to school and they get educated to implement and to teach, teach curriculums. So, we spend a lot of time training and working with our staff because, we don't want any fights. We want to prevent any fights at all.
Yes, I understand that, but I have a problem when we have teachers that's trained in restorative justice and de-escalation, and they don't do it because they were told not to, or they were told that they're not going to get any assistance. De-escalation occurs maybe with, say, if it's within a classroom or within a hallway. Those practices can be very effective until a security officer, SRO, get there. But when they tell you that no, don't do it, walk away, and allow the children to fight and be in harm's way, I think there's a problem there.
Okay, that is the problem, but that teacher is making a choice. So the teacher is telling you, I was told not to keep children safe, so I'm choosing to walk away. Those are a lot of choices that teacher is making.
But wait a minute, colleague. I don't want to get too deep into this. Let's just answer Mr. Hurd. No. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm talking about my staff's response. Okay.
Okay.
They have been trained to de-escalate, to get into anything that will restore calm and order to the situation.
Yes.
But the message, when you say they've been told, I'm just questioning where is that coming from? Because what I know is that the union has told teachers not to do that. They don't get involved in fights. So if you're being told by your union not to do it, that's a powerful entity telling you don't get into fights. All right. Now, I don't know about principals telling them that or anything, because we don't want teachers in fights. We don't. That's not what their primary mission is. And that's why we've hired additional folks to help. And if you have a button in your room, or you have we used to have walkie-talkies, everybody had walkie-talkie, at least access to one, you can get help immediately. And they come down and de-escalate situations. That's what I see and hear about every day. There's fights that occur, there's things that occur, but you should make we don't want teachers, to be honest with you, in fights, but I do want them using the training. I want them using their training to de-escalate the situation.
That's my concern, Dr. Cash, is that the training that they're told not to use to de-escalate a fight. You're allowing children to square up, get into a shouting match, and then a physical altercation, and I know that in their hearts that they want to say, okay, stop it, you go over here, or try to get between. But they've been told not to do that part of it, which will lead to maybe a child getting hurt.
Yeah, I'm not aware. We'll look into that. If you let us know about that, we'll certainly look into that.
Okay, thank you. My next question is Dr. Wright, you said that there's a criteria for bullying. Are you referring to the code of conduct, or is that a DACA? Is that a DACA?
Correct, that's a DACA document.
That's a document. And can you please send that to me? Because the criteria for bullying, bullying comes in all sorts, all sizes, all different phases, to all people. So we just want to get a understanding, because I truly don't think that the children understand, or the teacher may understand what has really occurred in bullying and what the statutes for bullying. And I don't know how that can be actually written to say, okay, this is bullying, this is not bullying, when it can offend a person or an individual.
That's exactly right. If it offends you, just because it offends you, that doesn't mean you're being bullied. So I will send you that document, and I'm confident you'll get clarity as to what I'm referring to. The difference between being offended and being bullied is one of them. But I'll get you that document, no problem.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. And the next thing I'd like to say is it's a little bit how I grew up, and it might give a reflection about what's going on today. A kindergarten, first, second, and third grade, I went to a Catholic school, Assumption, on the west side. And then, well, first and second grade. In third grade, I came to public school. Went to school number 82, which was outside of Langfield, Kenfield projects. And from that point on, when I was in the Catholic school, I was a straight A student. When I got into third grade, my grades dropped tremendously, because that's where I learned how to fight at. And every day was physical altercations. And our children are experiencing the exact same things today. I invite any one of you guys, I did this before, to come and join us in a Breaking Barriers group, come in our youth group, and hear the children's voices about what's actually going on in the buildings, what's going on in the streets, and how they're trying to maintain or trying to come to school, but it's elements that's preventing them from coming to school and coming on time, or just skipping school altogether. So with that, I'll just like to say that a lot of these children I went to school with, that we face these constant barrages of fights every single day. It was a fight every day somewhere. And some of the fights, is always wait till we get out of school, because they didn't want to get suspended. But teachers will come down to the corner and watch the fights in their cars and drive away, and then report it the next day. So there was no protection, and the kids are going through the exact same things today. Some of those kids that I went to school with, they dropped out of school. Some of them got on drug use. Some of them ended up incarcerated, and some of them became comedians, because if you was funny, nobody would mess with you. So they crack jokes and try to, be fun with everybody. So, I mean, that's not a funny story, but it's just things that children do to try to combat, the violence that's going on inside the buildings. There is a lot of violence going on in the buildings. I get this reported all the time through our youth groups, through teachers, through everything else. I mean, we can paint a picture saying that things are improving, but as of right now, it's not just this district, the city of Buffalo, but it's all across the country, and everybody reporting the exact same thing. So I'm not throwing pickaxe at this district. It's just how we deal with it and how we can try to maintain. One of the things that Dr. Cass said back in October is that he was looking for men to come into the buildings and people to come into the buildings and help supervise, and seeing that male aspect and fathers inside the building. I believe that was a great initiative. And I would like to see where, I know COVID happens and is constantly happening, and it might be, a little dangerous to bring individuals from the outside in, but we do have testing measures that we can bring men into buildings, and I spoke with some who would love this opportunity to do so. And I think that may be one of the solutions.
Next week is ramping up. We'll be reaching out to you, Mr. Herb, for your ideas and input about it.
Okay. But just right now, we have children that practices going inside of our schools, that children are, when they're late for school, that they serve hours detention after school, so that they're not coming to school at all. Or if they come to school, they're hanging in the hallways so that they don't get that hour suspension. They just come into the second class without signing in. And so they're getting caught in hallways, they're running through hallways. I'm getting these reports all the time. And some of the reasons why the children are late for school is because they don't want to be on a special bus, because they can be harmed in that special bus. They feel that it's a bad element on that bus, so they come to school late on purpose for their own safety. So it's an element that they're battling right now. And a lot of times, especially when I was teaching, I learned that then, and it still applies now, that students don't get on the buses right away after school because they stay inside the building and wait for all the kids to get on the bus to leave, but then they'll catch a regular bus home because they're afraid to be on the buses or they want to be in that bad element with kids that may be disruptive to them. So some of these things we really need to look at with the kids and listen to the student voice as we decide the punishment for a kid that they want to come to school late or they want to hang around after school. Mr.
Hurt, one of the things that Dr. Wright talked about earlier that we're implementing now are culture and climate walks. And as a part of that tool, we randomly just talk with kids who might be in the hallway during class to find out what's going on, you know. And when we do our culture and climate walks, we don't go at 8:30 in the morning when kids tend to, you know, have just had breakfast, things are kind of calm.
I'm sorry, Dr. Williams. I'm sorry, Doc. They don't know you. They're not going to talk to you. They don't know you. You're a stranger coming to the building. They're not going to stop and talk to you.
Wait.
I have a
I'll be honest. I'm being real. I'm being real.
I sent you that document that you wanted. It's in your email. I already sent it to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. But kids, you're a stranger to them. They don't have trust in you. They don't know you. They're not going to confide in you. I mean, it's a basic principle.
But we haven't had that experience so far. So far, our kids talk. Our kids want to be heard. And they're not often afraid of sharing what their stories and their realities are, especially if they feel like, you know, it's not punitive. And we never come at it from a punitive standpoint. We've both been principals in some pretty tough schools and know how to quickly build a rapport with kids and talk to them. So far, that hasn't been the experience. So far, they tell us the truth. I like this school. I don't like this school.
Please don't get me wrong. I'm not putting the onus on you personally, Dr. Wright or Dr. Taglione. I'm not putting it personally on you, but I'm saying as an individual that comes into the building, if they don't know you, don't recognize you, they're not prone to speak with you and engage with you on that level. That's what I'm saying. Nothing to take any credit away from you. Please.
Okay. All right.
Okay. A while ago, we asked and we said we was going to look into it, or maybe having a 311 that a child can dial on their phone. Let's face it, we lost the battle for cell phones. We got some schools that practice that you can use a cell phone, and some schools say we'll take it from you. But as of right now, we lost the battle on cell phones. So kids are using their cell phones all the time. So if we can have an app that we talked about before developing, or maybe a 311 they can call when there is trouble, that they can see trouble happening, or they feel they might be in danger, that we can have a response to that child at that time. I asked, if we can possibly look into that and help that, and I spoke with the youth group, and they feel that that'll be very adequate to help, especially some of the kids that they know.
I understand.
Okay. Last thing is the gang activity. These children, the code of conduct is out the window. You can write anything you want in the code of conduct or treat it as you want, level 1, 2, 3, or 4. But when they feel that life is in danger or feel like something's going to happen, they have no understanding of the code of conduct, and they're not going to abide, or think about the principles of it. It's about helping their friend that might get jumped. It's about helping another classmate or themselves, or keeping, someone out of danger or themselves out of danger. So I know that the code of conduct is very extensive. We work very hard on it. But in the mindset of a child, that's going through an issue, that's not their concern about the code of conduct and how it will be portrayed. We got kids that bring weapons to school, and they found weapons around schools and bushes stashed because I remember when I went to school, they did the exact same thing. They stashed weapons in buildings, up on the cars and lockers all around the facility. So it's just some things, and we got to ask the question: Why is this happening? Why are children bringing weapons to school? Why are children bringing guns? Why are grades dropping? Why are children coming late to school or late to class or leaving early? And you mentioned earlier that you got a consensus where you can actually track the child that may leave for that purpose. You got to ask them why this is happening. And like you said, you do that through your presence when you're inside the building. But it's mentally, why is this happening to a child and why are they doing that? We can have that data, and we probably can understand, the living environment that they're growing up in. I'm not going to continue on any longer, but I do like the point that you're making an initiative for the monthly meetings with the principals. But we also have teachers that are disconnected with the principal because they the principals are not pushing their message out about how they're feeling, what they're going through, or maybe it's not reading the right channels, and maybe it's reaching the right channels, but it's being ignored or not being addressed. So those are the only other concerns that I have. Of course, we all want safe buildings, and every board member and every administrative staff member, wants to see the continuity in our district and our kids and the learning environment. But as of right now, these schools, some of these buildings that we are in, that we're talking about, are free falls. And I don't see how, we can go on without properly getting this in line. Thank you. I'm not going to go any further.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd. I think that what you've said is the need for more communication and direct communication. I think both Dr. Williams and Dr. Wright have indicated that they want that kind of communication so they can be aware of all the things that you have brought to their attention, and more than just at a work session or a board meeting. So I hope we can have more communication. Board President Lou Petrucci, you've had your hand up quite a long time. Would you raise your question?
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Williams, Dr. Wright. That emphasis on relationships is really going to change things around. And I'm so glad to hear it, because that really is how you do this in type of effective type of, I don't want to call it policing, but these effective type of safety and security protocols are always predicated on healthy relationships. And Dr. Wright, I'm a little bit jealous because our kids were the same age and both went to the Buffalo Public Schools, but my grandson's in Texas. So hopefully I'll have another kid that goes to the Buffalo Public, grandson or granddaughter that goes to the Buffalo Public Schools. Got to keep that fine tradition going. I have a few questions today. So earlier in the year, I was a panelist with a local organization that deals with missing and exploited children. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about elopement and what the district does when a child, skips out of the building early. If you could just explain the process to parents and let them know what's happening or what the district's response is.
So an elopement is when a child leaves the building without permission, without supervision. And every elopement elicits a 911 call. So I want the community, I want parents to know that as soon as we realize a child has left the building, we engage law enforcement 911. Now, in most situations, our very faithful security officers follow that student, and because of the relationships, are able to get them to come back inside of the building. Sometimes it takes a little more coaching, and we've got our SROs on board, and then the child gets a ride home. But there's never a time wherein a child leaves the building, an elopement, and we don't call 911. We keep that data. Dr. Cash is notified of every 911 because that's one of those high priority incidences that he needs to know about.
Perfect, thank you. And then, heaven forbid, it does happen on occasion. A child goes missing. Do you guys continue that relationship with the Buffalo Police Department or whoever the agencies are?
Oh, absolutely. So one of the things we do on a daily basis is we wait for the bus, so for Al or for Cheryl or Joe to let us know that every child has made it home safely. So the buses all the children have been dropped off. So then we get to have a sigh of relief. But when we have a child that is missing, we continue to work with law enforcement, work with the principals, work with the family's friends to do everything we can to find that child.
Okay, thank you. The next one, I was hoping you guys could give me a response. I hate to air our dirty laundry, but recently we did have the event at Bennett that we were criticized by. I was wondering what the district learned and what the response was, and are we going to do anything different, or going forward, was an isolated event? What did you guys find out about that?
Thank you for the opportunity for me to respond to that. Those events are aberrations. So we don't have that occur in our district very often. What happened was a gap in supervision at the door. And that has been addressed swiftly and sternly. So one of the things, again, that made us aware of that incident was the fact that principals have relationships with their children. Information was given, and we were able to detect that weapon.
Beautiful. And could you comment a little bit about the district's wanding policies with respect, to detect metal objects coming into the buildings? Because I received a few phone calls once that incident occurred. They want to know what the district does, what the policy was.
So when there is a reasonable threat, we will wand every student that comes into a building. Now, there's a price for that. So that wanding process could take 45, 50 minutes, depending upon the size of that building. And so now you got children outside in the snow, in the rain, in elements, and other issues can, you solve one problem and then you create another one. As a rule, we do random wanding. So the children come through, they don't know if it's going to be their turn to be wanded or not. So now our security officers are trained, though, to notice kids. So if I'm walking behind Dr. Williams and all of a sudden I'm noticing that there might be a bit of a pattern, I get ahead of her, that security officer will then wand the both of us. So they are trained professionals to be aware of when children, kids are trying to evade our practices, our security measures.
Gotcha. No, that's good to know.
Can I jump in on it? Unless you're going to ask a question, related question. I think it's important because one thing about Fred I know is he's so tenacious in his work, but he's not one to talk a lot about this is what we do. And there's a lot of training that has been put into the security officers over these last several years. I know I brought some best in class chief of police to come and train the security officers, and he has them in ongoing training. So some of what Mr. Hurd was saying, and then to your question, Mr. Petrucci, particularly about this incident with the gun, is that we have policy. Sometimes mistakes are made, but kids are wanded. Kids are wanded randomly. If we can invest in more equipment, which is out there, then we can do it more frequently and we can do it more efficiently even. Because one of the things we don't want to do is have long lines of students being wanded or coming through security mechanisms like at the airport, and they're 2 hours before they get into class. So we try to do it random, but we also check lockers. Lockers are checked, colleagues, every day, randomly. Multiple lockers, at least 30 random lockers are checked every day. Backpacks are not supposed to be carried around in the hallways and into classrooms. Every kid that is late is wanded. And this is where this gap had happened, because that student should have been wanded. Sometimes go back to relationships. Oh, hey, how you doing, Lou? Come on in. But Lou could have a gun in his backpack, so you still should wand Lou, even though you got a relationship with Lou. So there's things like this that happen, but it doesn't happen often. And I just think that going forward, we need to make a little more investment, give a little bit more what the schools need, what the security team is asking for, and let's get that underway as soon as possible. Because each campus actually requires a little different type of security plan. See, you have a district-wide plan, but what I'm seeing is Hutch Tech, they need their plan. See, absolutely. iPrep needs a plan. McKinley, huge school, lots of exits and entrances. They need a plan for just that campus. Bennett has 3 schools on one campus, so we should treat that accordingly. You see, more security officers, maybe more different kind of plan, and designing it tailored to Bennett. The alternative school needs a really tailored plan, 131.
Yeah.
And we're working on that. That's been submitted to me for approval, and I've given that the green light. And it's a modified plan, and if it works, we ought to look at ratcheting that up to other schools, because you got all those kids coming in there at the same time. All of them have issues. You guess what? Count and you hold but you're going to have an issue. So what we're doing, we're staggering the populations of kids that come into the school at different times for different purposes, and that already has reaped benefits since we implemented it. So I just wanted to give you some of the things that Fred and his team are doing to address this stuff. Fred does exactly what Mr. Hurd is talking about. They do know him, and he does talk to these kids. He often is called from south end of the city to the north end, to the east end, to the west end, to the south, just to talk to a kid, because he has a special way of talking to them that no matter what their gang issue or affiliation might be, they come and get in order when he starts to talk to them. So we need to train more people like that. And that's why I'm trying to get this connection, Mr. Hurd, with the group you're talking about, but we need a bigger boat. See? I want 300 men, 500 men to volunteer and help our young people 2 hours a week for a whole year, maybe more. And let's see who steps up. See, let's see who steps up. All right, Mr. Petrucci, I'm sorry. Go ahead with your questioning.
Thank you, Dr. Cash. I'm glad that you're committed to investing more. It's a very, it's again, keeping our children safe is one of our priorities as a district. And there's a lot of new technology out there also.
That's right.
That could be helpful as well. One last question, and I will be quiet.
No, this is good. This is good.
So when our children are being placed back into schools after incarceration or long-term suspension, I was just wondering if there was coordination between security, the principals, and student placement so that we don't have the same type of situation that occurred that led to the suspension.
Yeah, great question. Dr. Wright.
That absolutely, particularly for our children who are returning from incarceration, because they're going from one very rigid culture to another where there's a lot of freedom. And so we make sure that they have the supports around them to be as successful as they can be. Even children returning from suspensions, what's supposed to happen is a restorative conversation, getting to the root, like you were saying, having that dialogue of what was the reason for the infraction, what's going on, how can we help? And then the child goes back to school. Whenever possible, we want the parents or a mentor to be a part of the conversation so that everyone is on the same page regarding the supports that children need in order to be successful. So again, they're kids. We're not expecting them to be perfect, but we are expecting them to continue to grow and be able to do better and be better.
Absolutely, I agree. And I will advocate for South Park for a security plan because it has a unique both physical location and student population as well. So yes, I think I love the idea of the individual plans. Each one of our buildings are unique.
Colleagues, and I will say that issue of coming from adjudicated incarceration situation back into the school population is an OFI for us, okay? That's an opportunity for improvement for us. It's a gap, and it's a tough one. I would almost prefer a half step before you just come back into the school, because what we're finding is some of the issues are egregious, colleagues. You're talking about murder beasts. You're talking about families that are gang families for many, many years and generations. And so it can get complicated when you're dealing with some of the students when also the families are in that. So if you're going to talk about some of this stuff, then I'm going to talk about it too. And I've seen it and I had a lot of experience with it, okay? particularly in Memphis. But what I'm saying is, I don't want to paint everybody that way. I just think they have to be handled a little differently. And so I think Sandra, in some cases, has intervened personally and done some things, because she has a group that she meets with, and then she'll talk to the father of, and that person will be not in the school population right away, and until they can be supported and treated and hopefully do change their ways. Terrence said some kids not gonna make a lot of difference, but I'm hoping because they're still kids, they still have a chance, and maybe we need to do some things different. The school though can't do everything. See, we're not magic. We don't solve all the problems of the world. Okay, I got at least a third of the incidents that have happened this year have been among adults. They've been among adults. Okay, and some of those have been the most egregious among parents and adults. Okay,
Let's see the report.
Attacking and beating the crap out of people. Okay, jumping on kids, beating the crap out of kids as an adult. So yeah, we need to talk about all of this, but everybody gonna hold accountability right here. Because what I can tell you is the school system already handles 9, 10, 15 ills that are occurring in society. We've already accreted a lot of that over the years. We're asked to do things, Terrence, that used to be handled by boys' clubs. Churches used to be far more influential than they are today in the lives of children. Okay, we feed lunch, we feed breakfast, we feed dinner, we do eye exams, we do medical exams, we do psychological exams, we counsel, we restore, we treat. Oh, and then somewhere in there we do academics. We try to do academics somewhere in there. So I know and I hear you, but I also want you to help, and I know many of you do. Spread the accountability. Make sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to do, and the whole neighborhood will get clean. It really will. But we're going to do everything we can do, everything that's within our mission to do, and we're going to do it to the best of our resources and our ability. But there still are accountabilities on the parents, and there's still accountabilities from the students themselves, particularly when they get to a certain age. And that has to get worked out better as well. All right, that's enough for me.
Okay, thank you, Big Papa.
There you go.
But Sharon Cotman has had her hand up for quite a significant time. So, Ms. Cotman.
So can I just say that it's important that we clarify that the gun incident happened on the Bennett campus. It did not happen at Bennett. The student was not a part of Bennett High School. The student was a part of bioinformatics. And Bennett had just come off of a sensational high. To have that information put out erroneously from the district without clarifying it really caused some feelings in that building amongst the principals. And I was there to have a conversation with them. So when we talk about the Bennett campus, not Bennett High School, okay, let's make sure we keep it clear in fairness to the work that Principal Alvarez has been doing over there. The other thing I'd like to just piggyback on this is that if there are resources in the building, it's important that the principals utilize them. This particular kid was not involved in any sports or any activities or anything like that. And so one of the things that I had a conversation with Mike House about is trying to find out how do we make sure that we get more children involved and get under the leadership of the coaches and doing some sports and things in those buildings to keep them actively involved. Okay, so just wanted to clear that up in fairness to the Bennett High School and to tell the truth about what went on the Bennett High School, the Bennett campus. Thank you.
But I'm not sure. Let me just ask a question. What is the purpose of that? I don't understand.
Well, the purpose is that if Bennett for years has had a negative connotation associated with them, they have worked to improve their graduation rate, one of the highest in the districts. They are working to recruit students who are of a caliber that they did not see prior to the restart of that school. And they want to make, and we want to make sure that the truth is told, period, simple. You would not say, you would make sure that you just say that it was the Bennett campus. It was not at Bennett High School. It was
I kind of understand that, but what I guess the bigger picture is that this incident can happen at any school. It can, and it is happening at any school. All I don't think it impugns the campus any more than it does for where it happened at the bioinformatics school. It doesn't impugn anything. It just means we got to do work to help the kid and help the situation.
It certainly does not help when you are trying to recruit students to come to play sports or to be a part of the academic piece. If the narrative is not correct, it does not help.
And that would be true of any school. So
that would be true of any school. So let's just make sure when we release information that it's accurate. That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
The Bennett campus, got it.
Now, the biomedics campus, to be specific, instead of the Bennett school, the biomedics campus would have been accurate.
Informatics. Now what?
That's actually not accurate either. It was the research lab.
It's bioinformatic research lab is what it is. But it's important that you understand that Bennett has worked hard.
Yes.
To clean up a reputation, and that in fairness to it happened on the Bennett campus at one of the schools on the Bennett campus, not at Bennett High School. That's all I'm asking.
Okay, board members. I was asked if
Holly, just keep in mind, because it's fine with me. I can discuss all night. But you are supposed to have some kind of storm tonight, and you are past the 5 to 7 slot. So just know where you are with your time and with the storm. Okay.
Trying to wrap it up, Dr. Cash. I was asked specifically to speak and address that some of the incidences that are going on in our schools everywhere, that the students are coming back with a little bit less respect for authority and routines. And that if we want to make a difference, when we have the few security officers that we don't have enough of them, that if we could please let the security officers hang and show their handcuffs so that the security officers are perceived as an authority figure who can handcuff these children. And that would be a little bit more of a deterrent and respect, and bring down a little bit of the incidences that are happening. And this was security people asking me to convey that, because we need the students to realize, oh, they have handcuffs, they are a security person and they can't handcuff you. And that's a little bit more deterrent. So I just wanted to get that in. And the other point I've been hearing, is communication between board members and the administration needs to improve. It is very, very important that we share all this stuff, that we're getting calls, but it is equally important that the administration share with the board members when you have crazy incidences of knifings on NFTA and all kind of craziness. And we are getting the information, and sharing the communication needs to go both ways. It needs to improve. So that's what I wanted to get in. And I see Terrence Hurd, if you can please make it brief, because everybody wants to go home.
I just wanted to respond.
Okay, I'll make it brief. Thank you so
Can I
much.
respond to what Ms. Board Member Wood said about the security officer who came? I don't know why we're talking about this online. However, that security officer needs to have a conversation with the executive director, Fred Wagstaff, about what they see as effective procedures for security officers. Now, that would be proper protocol. And finally, because what I will not do is allow this to end on a negative tone. I know that our role is about safety and operations. We cannot tell the public and leave it on a negative note that everything that's going on in Buffalo Public Schools is just out of control. I'm not going to ever send out that message. Do we have work to do? Yep. So does the community. We all have work to do. But let's be very clear and very focused on the fact that your feelings that it's not getting better do not match up with the data. The data are telling us that, and it's clear on the dashboard, that things are getting better. And it's also clear in my communications with principals, what they're really stressed out about right now is COVID. So let's maintain dignity for our children and stop sending out the message that people need to have handcuffs on them so that they can behave. We're not sending that message. We're not doing that. So, but thank you for bringing it to our attention. And I think the person already knows what the response is.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well,
Stated.
can we move ahead, Mr. Hurd, with your question?
Yes, I believe there is
More civil tone.
Yes, I believe there's an incident where Barbara Nevergold passed resolution about handcuffing kids, and I don't know if that falls under that category, but we should really look into that, and see some good points about that, and not focus on the handcuffs issue. Sorry about that, but that shouldn't really be our focus, is education. And secondly, I'd like to congratulate Fred Wagstaff, for all the work that he's doing in the district. It'd be remiss if I didn't, give a note that I visit a lot of schools, and every time I'm there, I see Fred Wagstaff. He's somewhere around, or he's driving around from school to school, early in the morning or late at night. Early in the morning or late at night, and he's always, have his heart out set for the children. And I know that is a very, very, very difficult and hard job with security. And also, when you say security, I believe his focal point is not just security, but it's the wellness of the children and the buildings. So it's more than just security. And I think that title should be changed a little bit to reflect the work that he does within the schools, because it's mentoring, it's curing the kids, it's working with teachers, police officers, and also working with us, the board. And Dr. Cash also, Dr. Cash would be a handful. So he's working with Dr. Cash also. So so I'd like to say thank you, Mr. Wagstaff, for the work that you're doing in the district, and I'm glad to see that you're out here doing the job that you do. Thank you.
We have
Well said, Herb. Thank you very much.
We have Jim McCosey's hand, and then Dr. Kathy Evans Brown.
I'm gonna take mine down. You know what, Dr. Wright, thank you, because you eloquently said what I wanted to say. Appreciate that.
My pleasure.
Dr. Kathy Evans Brown.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for this robust conversation. I think sometimes we need to have these conversations because as a board member, I think that wherever the incident happens, it's reflective of the Buffalo Public Schools. And I went back here when I was a substitute teacher in the schools. I went around and there were more, some schools were more difficult than others. But I remember, I think this was a 6th or 7th grade class. And of course, I'm about 5'3", and at that time, those boys were taller than me, but they don't, they have, I always remind them I raised 5, and I don't care how tall you get, because my youngest one right now is 6'4", 4.5", he say 6'5", but he's 6'4", but he's tall. But the point is, when I worked in the schools, we all have to be accountable as teachers, as substitute teachers, as principals, as adults. And we must maintain and require respect. And I remember this young man had been out of school for something, I don't know, suspended for something. He was a badass, excuse my expression. That was his reputation. And my class at the time, they were going well. They were doing their work because they knew if they do their work, then you get, incentives. So his mom brought him in probably about 11 o'clock in the morning. And he comes in and he says, you're looking at everybody. And, some of the kids transform because here is, I guess, the king of the class. And so I said, excuse me, you can have a seat. And he said, I'm not going to sit down. I said, wait a minute. I think your mother's still in the parking lot, hot off the press. You want me to call her to tell her to come pick you up? And he looked at me, kind of like Jeremy, he set his behind down. But the point is, we as adults, have to, learn to, engage kids. When they know that you have their back, that you're interested in them, I don't care who you are, there's a certain amount of respect that these children must provide.
That's
okay?
right.
And again, I had boys, and they knew that I wasn't coming to school for your behavior. That is not what I'm going to do. I'm working every day. Your dad's working every day. Now I'm gonna come to school. You having academic difficulties, somebody disrespecting you or something else. But to come in for your behavior, I didn't have to do that, and I raised boys. And so today in 2022, we should expect the same things of our children. We should expect the same things as teachers, as principals, etc. It's just unacceptable. So, like Dr. Cass said, we all know this. We can't be everything to everybody. We're educating our children. Certainly, it's not just in Buffalo that, this extra, activity and behaviors is going on. I read the articles, it's across the United States, in urban districts in particular. But we have to understand that there's protocols, there's accountability for everybody, the kids, the parents, the teachers, the administrators, and everybody else. So I just had to say that because these conversations are important and we need to get back. But COVID still is rampant. We have to pay attention to that as well. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kathy Evans-Brown. I don't see any other hands up. Anyone want to make any last remarks before we close out this meeting? It is late. Hearing none. Go ahead.
I just wanted to just assure the public, I don't know how many calls and what folks have been dealing with as far as these take-home tests that went out. I did state that I would just address this real quick. I did speak with the district, specifically with Dr. Tanja Williams. There is much more information that is on our website. Also, I saw myself and board member Scott, and if other board members would maybe follow suit for our constituents, just share the link so that folks can get answers to, the testing. It seems, we got the tests, through the government. They delivered them on a Saturday night on the holiday weekend, and we put them out there as directed, Monday and Tuesday. Yes, the rollout was a little confusing. I, as a parent and a grandparent, was a little frustrated and confused, and you know, I did talk to folks about it. So I am more than okay with what I've heard. A lot of there was a note that went out to the district, you know, across the board on Monday. I missed it, I'll be completely honest. So I was confused when I saw two different notes from different schools that didn't have the same wording. It didn't seem like it was across the board. When in all actuality, those notes that principals had sent out, and I commend the principals who did, were extra on top of the letter that was sent out by the district. So it was their extra incentive to make sure folks take these tests, you know, follow the protocols. But now the district on the website has like how to go about, what the testing results are, what to do. And that is across the board for everyone. So no matter if you took the test as an elementary student or as a high school student, you have all the information now on the website. It's on social media. I appreciate, and again, I was sharing in some of the confusion and frustration as I was administering the same test to my 11-year-old. But I just want to make sure that the listening audience knows that we do have much more information. And to be completely honest, I probably should have talked to folks first, because we really only had a 4-day window. And in that time, we received all these tests. We had put them all out there. They were distributed. And now, you know, it's like 4 or 5 days later, and we're really catching up with what we were actually told to do. So thank you again to the district for making sure that we have these tests. I think questions are going to come down the line, and maybe you can add this to this, as if we have tests that weren't, you know, sent out, or tests that maybe we know people didn't take, or we have an extra amount.
Jen, you're frozen. Okay.
Jen is off now.
Okay. Well, can I get a motion? Well, if there's no other comments, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Not a need, not a need to adjourn. You can just end the committee.
Okay, well then that's the end of the Finance and Operations Committee. Thank everyone for their reports and their information. I'm sure it was greatly appreciated by our audience. And everyone have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody be safe.
Thank you. Thank you.
Stay warm, everybody.
Be safe for this snowstorm.